able on Monday to talk with a colleague about the stuff we talked here about, right? And you don't have it forgotten already. So this is why the first thing I want to do with you is something for the arrival, and I want to share something with you. This is a very personal experience from me having yesterday. The weather was just perfect, and I went to the lake with my best friend and her little daughter. Her name is Hannah. She's 2.5 years old, and it was my first time with her playing at the lake, and it was just an amazing time because she was so happy about the water, jumping around, springing, laughing all the time, and that makes me very happy in the evening. I went home, I had a smile on my face all the time, and I forgot all my problems and challenges at hand. And now I want you to remember such a moment of your life during the last days. The next 4 minutes, I will play a song, and during that song, please think about a moment where you were really happy. Just imagine what was around you, how was it smelling. So let come this moment alive, and when the song is over, we will continue with the next step. In your head now, and now let's continue. As I told you in the beginning, we are here to talk about a didactic framework to sustain learning outcomes, and I would like to ask you now to write down your personal questions. So what is one thing you want to get answered here right now, you want to learn right now? Try to be very specific as much as you can. You can write it in the Miros board. Just take a new post-it and put it in the right section, or just put it in front of your paper. So take 2 minutes now to think about your question you have here right now. Why are you here? What do you want to get out of this? See some very interesting questions of you. That's perfect. So now you somehow primed yourself, channeled your attention, and we move on to the next step, because all of us already have a lot of knowledge and experience with these kind of things. And I would like to ask you to take a post-it and write down 3 related topics where you already have something in your head, where you already have some knowledge about. So connect this topic with something you already know. Just come up with some associations, something what you did in the past maybe about it. Just 3 related topics you have in your head. Quick, not a lot of time, but it should be fine for now. And I want to share my screen now so I can go through the actual topic and to show you my slides. Just a second. So now let's deep dive into it. Make yourself comfortable. I will just guide you through some slides and explain the process, which we already started, by the way. So hi again, my name is Tina. I'm a co-founder of a startup called Mevolute, and we are doing training, coaching, consulting in the field of learning organizations. And I have a background in the field of education science and had a lot of experience the last years because of the Agile coach curriculum, which we did together with the Deutsche Telekom. And yeah, we did the trainings, and there we experienced it as well. A lot of things are forgotten just the next day. And what can we do? So I started already last year to think about things which sustain learning outcomes. And we experienced some stuff, and all the knowledge somehow now is gathered into this framework. So let me show you the overview. We have basically 5 steps in that framework, and the first 3 steps you already went through. So we tried to start with some positive emotions. I will explain in a second why we did it. Then we did some goal setting. So you formulated a question you are interested in. You started to build some connections. And now we are in the phase of the actual learning content, because I'm using some slides to explain some stuff to you. And after that, we'll have the dual repetition and the next steps. And in case you have a question now, just interrupt me, unmute yourself, and I can answer your questions. So, and let's dive into the 5 steps. Why did we do the check-in with the positive emotions and the memories? We need to handle our feelings before we can start to learn. So this is something you probably experienced yourself unconsciously when you had a conflict with your colleague or some stuff like that, or you are angry about the traffic jam you had to come to the workshop, or your Wi-Fi connection just broke before you wanted to attend the training. These negative emotions block us when we want to learn. And emotion drive our attention, and attention drive our learning ability, our problem-solving capability. So it's important to handle our emotions before we want to start to learn. And how can we do that? We can just have a look at some approaches out of the field of positive psychology and make use of them. So what I did in the beginning, I asked you to come up with a memory, what makes you really happy. You can do a lot of other stuff to start your learning journey together with your participants. For example, you can do the so-called journaling, just grabbing paper, writing down what's in your head right now, then putting the paper aside, and you are kind of ready for the learning right now. You can do a gratitude check-in, asking your students or whoever, so what are you especially grateful for? Or you can start maybe experimenting some kind of meditation techniques, like breathing techniques. So in that case, we settle the ground, we are getting ready, we are getting here, and our brain, everything is scientific proven, our brain is ready for learning. So we are able to gain new knowledge. And if you want to have a look at further approaches, you can have a look at Martin Seligman and the book Authentic Happiness, which is really helpful to get new impression on the positive psychology approaches. So now the ground is settled, we can get ready to learn what's next. So we did some goal setting. And this is helping us to focus, to channel our attention. And there is another aspect coming in addition, a very positive one, because it moves the learner from this passive consumer attitude, like, yeah, come on, I'm here to get entertained, and maybe I'm getting something out of it, to a more active learner attitude, because I'm forced to ask a question. I'm forced to focus my attention and ask myself, why am I here? And this is effect, it's called the priming effect from neuropsychology. This is enhancing our learning outcomes because it influences how our unconscious brain is processing the information. There is a simple study they did, and I can share it here with you. They showed a group of people a lot of pictures related to being old. For example, a home for elderly people, something what is always connected to having the feeling you are an old person. And then later on, these people had the task to just move the room. In the same building, just move the room. And they took much more longer time for moving into another room than other people, which were shown before pictures from random pictures, not just related to being old, but they moved like normal, and the other people, they moved very slowly. This is called the priming effect. Even when someone is talking about bananas and then the next moment someone is asking you about a color, you would probably say yellow. This priming effect we can use for our learning outcomes. So we ask to a challenge, to a question, formulate yourself, what are you interested in here right now? And I hope you can get out of that session what you formulated just 5 minutes ago. And if you are interested more in the priming effect, you can have a look at Daniel Kahneman and Thinking Fast and Slow. He's really going into detail into these books. So the next thing we did was building connections. So I asked you for some associations, something what you already know, what you did in the past. And this is helping you to anchor these new knowledge in your brain. So as you can see it on the picture, it's like completing the puzzles. So new knowledge is not just rushing through. No, we are connecting it to something we already know about. And this is helpful so we can generate meaning for it. And this helping us again to sustain this new knowledge. Sorry. And there are some so-called elaboration techniques which help us to enhance these connection building and complexities thinking, especially relevant in these times of VUCA where everything is very complex and connected. And you can do that by just drawing a mind map, for example, or some systems mapping where you draw some arrows, what is connected with each other, what is influencing each other in a positive or in a negative way. You can start to questioning the topics, for example. So why should I learn in general? Why is it important? You can just behind ask questions, and this is already helping preparing your brain in the physical structure to get ready for the actual learning content. And if you are looking for some other techniques which you can use at that point, you can have a look at the Systems Thinking Playbook. They have really hands-on approaches as well. So, and now we are in that phase now, you are doing your actional learning content. This can be showing slides, watching a video. This can be even, for example, reading a book, as I will do later on, and just going through these steps will help you to sustain the knowledge of the actual learning content. So what do we do after that? We will do some repetition. And now it's time to put all the new knowledge, what is now in our working memory, we need to put it somehow in our long-term memory. So we are able to repeat it next week and the week after again. And the chance to have it in our long-term memory is even higher when we do the repetition in two different ways, in a verbal way and in a non-verbal way. So that means we should pair written and visual stimuli so we better remember it. And there are a lot of techniques out there. For example, the method of Loki. Some of the memory world championship people use the method of Loki. So they are combining pictures in their head with a place which they know very well. For example, you picture your kitchen in your head with all the different stuff inside, and then you are asked to memory a list of words. So you connect the first word with the first thing in your kitchen, and then you are basically moving in your head from place to place in your kitchen, and this is helping you a lot to be able to memorize all the stuff. And we can use that in two ways, basically. Now you have the written context, you have something what is verbal coming out of my mouth. And in addition to that, I can ask you to draw a picture after I'm finished, and you use just some keynotes to underline what is important to you. Or you can ask your participants, in case you have some Lego available, to just build a Lego model after you did some input. And then they are even doing haptically something with their hand, and this is helping to process, to get the information in the long-term memory. And there are more techniques like that in the Moonwalking with Einstein, so you can have further reading on that if you like to. And the last one, because learning is just successful when we translate it into next steps, into actions, we want to translate it into new behavior. And there a start small but start approach is very helpful. It gets us into this growth mindset. And this is an accelerator for continuous improvement for us personally, but for our teams and our organizations as well. And helpful steps are defining due dates, involving others, and or using digital supports. For example, there is this funny app where you can just put something in what you really hate to support. For example, you can say, I'll spend 10 euros for the, now I'm missing an example. I can spend 10 euros for a political department I'm not supporting in case I'm not changing how I approach learning, for example. And a very basic example could be, this evening I'm having dinner with my girlfriend. I'm talking to her about this, what I learned today in the Agilista Bar Camp. So these actions, but they are necessary to translate knowledge. So this can be even small ones, but always after you did a training, a workshop, a session, whatever, ask your participants, so what will you do differently right now? Come up with a small action part and try to get some commitment in it. For example, to pair people together and they are asked to talk about their processing in the future. And about the growth mindset, I can recommend the Mindset book by Carol Dweck. So now that was the 5 steps. And do you have any questions so far before we move on into the next 2 steps and we can have a discussion on that? Any questions? I cannot hear anything. So then I would say...
I got a question.
Yes, please.
I got a question. So you said you have done some research and you have developed this method. Do you have some data? So like how much more people can remember stuff if they follow the process?
Yeah, no, not yet, unfortunately. I'm still in progress with that. We are testing it with different clients, but no data yet. Yeah. If you want, I can share my personal opinion to that. I try to make some basic comparison. I read a book without doing that, and I read a book with doing it. And then after a few weeks, I compared how much I know, and it was like I could remember 130 more than without doing it this way. Yeah. So then let's complete it, I would say. I will stop sharing my screen. So after that, now, as you had my little presentation, you can come up with a reflection in a visual way. So in case you have a piece of paper, I would like to ask you to take 5 minutes to draw just what you remember. You can use the Miro board and you can draw as well, but drawing in Miro is difficult. So I would recommend using maybe some emojis to just reflect on what you've heard so far. Feel free to test it out, to try it. So we have now 5 minutes time for drawing or using emojis in Miro to reflect on what you've heard. Okay, so let's move on to the last step. So now it's just about grabbing a post-it or writing down a name. So who could be interested? Who you know about that? And so who do we want to talk about this? And I can get a recommendation. I usually send the emoji just via WhatsApp or iMessage to a person and say, hey, next time you see us, I want to talk about this with you. And then it's support for my memory as well. When I meet the person, I can just have a look at the emojis, and it's much more easier to explain. That was basically it. We run through the 5 points now, and I wanted to have some time in the end because I'm interested in maybe you have some other techniques, approaches, how you sustain your learning outcomes for yourself or with a group of people, that doesn't matter. So now we have time to discuss about it. So you can maybe share something, and in the end, because I wanted to have the discussion here with you, just here on the bottom, there is the video about Agile learning culture in general, where I talked about what is it, what are their benefits, and on the 3 levels of individual, team, and organization, what do you need to do to come up with a learning culture within your organization. So feel free to have a look later on, but now I would like to hear your thoughts about it, some feedback, some discussion, some of your approaches. Feel free.
Okay, I go first. We're running a lot of classes, and once someone came to me and say, "Did you know training from the back of the room?" And I said no, and then I bought the book, did the class, and it's amazing. It's also like neuroscience, like how people learn and what needs to be done. And a lot of things that you mentioned are also mentioning there. For example, repetition, different ways. And so this is something that I use quite a lot as a resource, training from the back of the room. Sharon Bohan, I don't know.
Yeah, I just wanted to share what you just mentioned. I think it was a kitchen or some room you mentioned where you would remember the room you have been in, learning something. So I had the experience that I wanted to look something up during a presentation. I wanted to look something up in the internet, and I somehow landed in New York due to a wrong Google search. And it was really funny that I then still remembered that I had been in Google Maps somewhere in New York, in Brooklyn, and I remember the presentation. So this is somehow connected. And I think this is also some strategy which memorizing strategy which people take, that they have a certain path they are going, and at certain places at the path they remember certain numbers, for example, something like that. So I think that was the effect I just experienced there by coincidence.
What I remark is that things that you're really interested in go right through in your brain, but unfortunately that doesn't fit to every stuff we have to learn for our job. So a lot of the agile methods or mathematics or whatever are going in here and out there, and then of course it's harder to try to keep it in mind, and with the other it's very easy to remember them. So yeah, we have to practice the steps.
Absolutely. Practicing is so essential.
I think
I learned some years ago, I learned a method to memorize large numbers just for fun. So there is a very simple principle, but after I took maybe 2 hours, and then I had pictures in my mind for the numbers from 0 to 99. And with this small pictures, icons in my mind, I when I want to memorize a large number, I build up a short story. And it was amazing. I was immediately capable of memorizing 15-digit numbers immediately for days and weeks. And this was a fun thing to do, and something that also trained my mind, I think, and something that inspired myself to be able to do this and to make fun with friends, tell me a number, and memorize it tomorrow. I know it's still tomorrow, and this was really great.
Yeah, and one thing about the problem Babette mentioned, something what is interesting you can remember, but everything else not. So I had the same issue, and we try to connect it. So what is interesting you and what is not interesting you so much, but you need to learn. So basically we did, for example, for an event management team, they should be able to learn about Scrum, and we did a Scrum training, but with the topic of organizing a big music festival. So they learned how to organize it, but in an agile way using the Scrum framework. And that was helpful to really stick with their head. So maybe think about how to connect these things.
What I can add is maybe the importance of examples. So if you're a trainer and you can offer different examples for the theory you have in your course, then it depends, of course, on the people who are sitting in front of you. But if you have examples from the job or examples from private other sessions, then it's a good help. That's what I always found very good when the trainer come around with the life, and then it's that's why, and that's the aha moment. But with a memory games, is also some pitfalls. So I have maybe an anecdote from my past. I tried to use this memorizes with one is a swan or two is a swan, one is a candle and things, and to remember numbers and then make stories with the issues I have to remember. And I have a big bag, number 67, and I put something into it. It's still there since 10 years, and I don't remember what I put into the bag. Instead of remembering, it's only the bag, but I don't know what's in there.
Thank you, Tina, for this resource, this book. I find it very interesting. I have finished one course, learning how to learn. And it was funny when you have 40 plus and you are learning how to learn. And there are some facts supported by the neuroscience. And I told to my kids and everyone that this should be, basic sets ABC in the school when kids are starting to learn, because it's really easy how to absorb. Like you said, repetition, this learning pyramid, not just listening one course, but using different senses how to absorb this content. Then you are raising this retention rate. But very interesting for me is this next step. What about now? What about this? What after the session, I have provided you something. What will you do? And then when you make commitment, then it is great, because you have set up here, think about the person, think about some dates, and then it's more probably that they will really start to use this. And I'm curious more about this priming, how to engage them, how to go below the surface to interact with your participants, with your colleagues.
Yeah, thank you, Vishna. There are a lot of ways to do the priming in general. So it always depends on the topic you want to discuss, you want to learn more about. For example, now I'm reading a book it's called An Everyone Culture, Becoming a Deliberately Developmental Organization. And I just knew in the beginning that it's about putting people's personal development in the focus of an organization. So this was the only thing I knew. And I did just in YouTube, I put it in personal development of a person, and I watched the 2 or 3 TEDx talks. That was helping me for priming to get into the topic. So, and this is maybe something you can randomly do with any topic. Just start Googling, set yourself a time frame. It doesn't need to be long, just maybe 10 minutes priming, and you start to be into it somehow. So it's enough for the beginning. Start small, but start, and yeah.
Thank you.
Well,
I have one question. Do you think that the priming part might prevent you from being creative? Which in learning, you don't always have to be creative, because if you have a certain setting and you want to learn some specific thing, you don't have to develop it at that moment. But I was just wondering, because you set your mind to the one subject, could that be a problem, or is it irrelevant?
It's a very interesting question. I ask myself if I'm not able to be thinking outside the box when I'm primed on something. And I need to have a look again, because I don't know yet. I just would say that maybe yes, because the priming is priming you for getting new information in your brain and sustain it. And when I want to be creative, it's a different thinking mode. There are different areas in your brains connecting to each other when to want to do some problem solving, and not just the learning the classical way. So yeah, I would think that this may be counterproductive when you want to have a creative ideation session or something like this.
Which I totally buy into your framework, which I like and totally agree with. You have to differentiate then, which for me would be totally okay. Now it's we learn something about something, and the other thing is now we develop something. If you divide it, there will be no problem, and it's very fine. So thank you for your very insightful ideas.
Thank you.
But this is a good point, because I experienced that from learning languages or learning an instrument, that you, on the one hand, you learn, for example, vocabulary, but on the other hand, you really have to practice to build sentences to understand written and spoken language. And the same for an instrument, you learn how to use the instrument, but then you really get into the music and being part of an orchestra, for example. So, and my experience is that the combination helps the best also for the vocabulary. Just learning vocabulary is more difficult to remember than when you really practice the vocabulary in a certain circumstance.
Yeah. Thank you, Antje. I guess we did a very important point in the end now. So thanks for your comments. And so someone already started to give some feedback. Feel free. I'm happy, very glad about any feedback you have for me. And yeah, you can stay connected via LinkedIn. I put the link on the Miro board as well. And maybe if you want, just write me a message next week if you can still remember what we talked about. And then I would say, yeah, we are on time. It's Friday noon, so let's get back to the main room to say goodbye to everyone and thank you for the great sessions. So thanks for participating.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. Bye.
Thank you.